This is the story how I flew a Russian fighter jet to the edge of space.
Great.
The world is a weird place. You can do anything with money. If you have money, you can do stuff. And this is kind of one version of those stories, but many years in the making, of actually traveling to a weird place in Russia and being able to fly a MiG-29, a high-end fighter jet, to really high near the edge of space, see the curvature of the Earth. And before we get started, hi, my name is Taro, and this is called The Spore, my YouTube channel where I share my ideas or spores about things I've learned in life and mistakes I've made about building mushroom businesses or living around the world or having kids and family and try to be conscious around it. This story was decades in the making, and I'm gonna try to keep it short, but it will be relevant for when we actually get to the meat and potatoes, or vodka and potatoes of the story in Russia. So I was born and raised in Finland, and my mom is from a town where they train the Finnish pilots. And every midsummer, which is one of our biggest festivals, if not the biggest festival, the airbase would open up, kind of like open door policy. And us as kids could go to the airbase and we saw different kinds of military planes. Not as fancy as the one I'm gonna later talk about at that point, but when I was a kid, it was very impressive. We got to fly some basic small Cessnas and planes, and it left a memorable mark in my brain. And through that, I ended up in the Air Force myself. In Finland, we have a military service, mandatory military service. We don't really have a military really, it's called defense forces. We're only allowed to defend ourselves from people like Russia, but we have to serve. It was a memorable experience, and at that time, the Finnish Air Force had F-18 Hornets, and seeing them fly was like really left a big mark on me. And I was like, wow, that's one of the coolest things you can do with your pants on. Post-military, I took a ferry ride from Finland to Sweden, and I thought about what do I want in life? Until at that point, I was done what was expected of me. I'd gone to, elementary school, middle school, high school. I had 2 degrees at that point, actually already. I'd bought a house. I was in a committed relationship, like potentially getting married and having kids in my early 20s, which did not end up happening. And I was like, what do I really want in my life? I was like, who is me? A lot of my thoughts I got from TV and friends and my family and my culture. And I was like, what's true to me? And on that ferry ride, which takes about 12 hours, I wrote 1,000 things I want to do in life before I die. This was before the bucket list movie. I wrote my own bucket list. And at the end of that, I circled 5 things that I thought out of all the 1,000 things. Some of them were like really stupid young 20s things, like buy a Lamborghini that I absolutely don't want, but like things like that. But then there was the gems. And one of these gems was that like really my whole life I've been wanting to be in a fighter jet because I saw it as a kid and I served in the Air Force. So I started doing research in the early days of Google, and I found that you can do that in Russia, of all places, of course. And it costed roughly the same amount that I was just about to make in profit, about 20,000, I think US dollars, of selling my first home condo. And I was like, I have the money, I could do it. But I felt like it was pointless. It's a pretty short flight. And I was like, am I gonna spend all my savings at 20 to do this one thing? And I was like, I have to do something for the world. And I wrote in my journal that I wanna help 100,000 people live healthier before I allow myself this experience. And then I put the notebook away, I forgot it for like 10 years. 10 years later, now in my early 30s, I find the notebook and I read it and I'm like, heck, I forgot that dream or that goal to have. And I started thinking that, have I crossed 100,000 people? And I reached out at that point to the CMO of my company, Four Sigmatic. Four Sigmatic is a mushroom-based wellness company. We make coffee, protein capsules sold internationally. Here in the US, you can find it online or Whole Foods or Sprouts or whatever. And at that point, we just crossed like 100,000 customer list. And I was like, that's the sign that I now have to do this. This is roughly 2017, and I started furiously figuring out how do I do it. But at that point, Russia had started blocking some of these, I don't know how legal they ever were, but basically using the government's planes for foreigners for money. I don't know who pulled money in between. I'm sure it was a very corrupt system. So they were gonna shut down the airspace, do maintenance, But I found a guy in Switzerland who said he can get us in. And he had gotten people in before, and he said there's still a chance now. It's very unpredictable what happens in the future, as now with the war in Ukraine and whatnot, we can see that things can change. But at that point, it's like, we're not sure if this program will survive, but there's one window that you can do it. And it's in midsummer exactly before this maintenance period, which was perfect because I always wanted to do it in midsummer. So I had to act fast. But I didn't know if these people were legit. And they gave me, there was a detail on a bank account in Switzerland where I had to deposit most of this money. It was roughly, I think, 16 or 17,000 out of the 20,000. I needed to deposit to get a place in. I did it. I thought it was a leap of faith. It's one of those crazy things, and booked it without knowing it's going to happen. I was also worried about all kinds of security breaches, cybersecurity things, and I didn't really tell all but like, I think 2 people that I'm going to go there. And they gave me an address in this, I think, 4th largest city in Russia, roughly, called Nizhny Novgorod. It's a huge city. You haven't heard about it, but it was actually, foreigners were not allowed there until I think 2018, when the World Cup or football, whatever it is, Russia hosted soccer tournament, and Nizhny Novgorod had a stadium because it was a big city. But a few years before that, as a foreigner, you couldn't go because of the military bases. So I was going to travel there by myself in midsummer. Didn't tell my mom, didn't tell all but these 2 people, and I fly there by myself. I booked the nicest hotel in this town, not that expensive. I think it was like $100 a night. And I thought there was like a Lenin statue, and I was like, okay, we'll live it large. And obviously it was mostly a brothel, and with like a strip club downstairs, that where I stayed. And I went to have dinner. I didn't know where to go. I didn't want to walk around town. So I went to the restaurant at the hotel. This will be relevant for the story later. And I order in, they don't speak English. My Russian is very so-so. It's very spasiba and privet, cocktaila level, which is not good. So I use Google Translate, can I have dinner? They brought me dinner. And a lot of what you don't know about maybe Russians is that they're very nice people, like the nicest. The hospitality of Russia is one of the best in the whole world. Like generally the nicest, most welcoming people, which a lot of people don't necessarily know. But they were like, gave me like a free beer, and the whole restaurant came to me for me to drink beer. I don't drink beer. I don't like the flavor. And generally at that point, I didn't drink any alcohol in general, but I felt bad, so I drank the beer. Next day, they come pick me up and drive me to like, not an Air Force base, but like the ghetto basically. And they say, give me your laptop, your passport, and phone. You can't bring any of those into the airbase. And at that point, I was wondering, nobody knows where I am. Literally nobody like knows where I'm exactly at. Is this like where I'm gonna die? And I was like, well, I'm come this far, so might as well roll the dice. I give it to them. They take it away. I still don't know today if they stole something cybersecurity related or not. But then they started driving me another, I don't know, an hour maybe. And now we're in actual airport place. So I kind of feel better. We get there, and I have a translator who picked me up, who speaks pretty much fluent English, but everyone else really almost none. And we get there, and you do a medical check. And in this medical check, I failed with high blood pressure. I've never had high blood pressure. I was not sick for 14 years in a row. My mom taught nurses. I've never had once in my life high blood pressure. But they were like, no problem, no problem. We always test twice. And they tested me again, and again, I failed the medical. And I was like, what the heck? And they were like, you didn't drink last night, right? I was like, oh no, I did have a beer. But I didn't want to tell them because they could ban me from it. So they start fighting in Russian. The translator goes, there's a whole thing. And then at the end, they're like, no problem, no problem. We sign a couple extra paper. And then they brought me some contracts and Cyrillic letters. I don't even know today what's in those letters. I signed it. I was like, might as well roll the dice. But at that point, I kind of panicked. And I don't remember any of what happened from there to getting to the base. There was a briefing of like both security and what do I need to do. I don't remember any of it. There is a videographer there that shot it. And then afterwards I looked at it and I was conscious. But the guy asked me multiple times, apparently, that am I okay? Because I look pale. But I just had some sort of a panic attack, I guess. I've never had that before, and I've never had it since. I don't know what it was, but I don't remember any of it. So I'm at the tarmac with the pilot who I'm supposed to fly with, who's there for security purposes and some of the technical maneuvers of the flight as we're going to the edge of space. His name is Andre. He knew some English, very little, not really. He was like, no touch, do not puke. No touch, here, fly plane, don't puke. And Andre was very clear, no puking allowed. And a lot of the controls were different than I've seen in planes before, and they were in Cyrillic, so I didn't really know what to do. But I knew the basics of, hey, here's a joystick, you fly with that and you control the wings on your left hand.
Ready?
Ready.
Let's go.
So off we go. My panic is now calm. I'm calm. We take off. Andre takes the plane off. It's actually kind of hard to maneuver on the tarmac if you don't know. Like, you use the pedals really in the ground, not in the air. So now we take off. I'm calm. I'm excited. I'm actually having fun. The views are pretty. I love a thrill and an adventure. So now we're in the air. Andre's flying at this point. I'm not doing anything. And the first goal is that in the beginning of the flight, we'll do supersonic speed. So we hit about 1.6 Machs, 1.6 times the speed of sound. I don't know, that's something in miles, 1,300 miles, something like that per hour. And that's pretty easy. Like, it's a cool experience, but it's not that demanding for your body or difficult. But then the airplane shoots with really high speed into the stratosphere, to the edge of space, and floats there for a really short time. You kind of have to put the engines off, so because it's so cold up there. So you shoot up to space, float there. And it was a cool moment when I saw the curvature of the Earth. On the other side, there was complete darkness. On the other side, it was sun. Summer, you can't go quite as high as in the winter because of the temperature, but it was cool to see it. I don't know if the world is round, but I know it's not flat. It's at least curved. I've seen it with my own naked eyes. So haters will say it was GoPro, but I saw it with my own naked eyes. It is curved at least. I digress. So anyway, that was a cool experience. Then we come down, and then I get to fly myself. And I got to do loops and rolls and things like that, kind of like low, easy acrobatics. I've also flown other fighter jets, I should have probably mentioned, but like an L-39 and flown small planes for short whiles. I don't have a pilot's license. I should have probably said that in the beginning as well. But I knew how to fly a little bit, and I can tell you that MiG-29 was very easy to fly. I guess there's so much technology and it's so sophisticated. It was very easy to maneuver. Like the L-39 or other fighter jets, it was a lot harder. It was more physical and technical, and this was quite easy actually. So it's not that impressive. It sounds impressive. It's not that impressive. But then at that point, Andre says one of the coolest ass shit I've ever heard anybody say, and they say, "My plane," and takes over the controls from me. I guess also Western pilots say that, but when you change the pilots in a commercial flight, you say "my plane." He says "my plane" with the thick Russian accent like a boss, and then does this reverse loop. And I think we hit something like 5 Gs, so 5 times my weight. So I weigh, that point, I think I'm like 185. Times 5 was the gravitational pull that I felt. And I was not ready for it, really. Like, I've done some G work before, but not like this. I lost my vision. It got blurry in the eyes. I did not go unconscious, which happens a lot because of like the blood basically escapes your head into extremities. And at that point, your body protects you by kind of shutting it off. That did not happen to me, but my eyes got blurry. So I was conscious. And there was a mic on my left-hand side where you control the wings, where how I would communicate between the two pits with Andre and me. And Andre went, "Everything okay?"
You okay?
And I was gonna be like, hell no, that is not okay. I cannot see, and we're good right now. I'm done with this portion of the flight. But he had moved the wings, and I couldn't hit it. And it was like, he said one of the most memorable few words I've ever heard in my life. He say, "Okay, next, hammer."
Hammer.
Hammer. And this is like a short moment in my life that I'll just like vividly remember forever. But he just hammer. Anyway, hammer is a move that I knew from my time in the Air Force. And he knew it was like one of the only moves that have killed people in Finland. It's basically a maneuver where you shoot up At high speed, you shut down your engines, you free fall, flip over, and shoot the engines back on. But if they don't go back on, you're in trouble. And I'm panicking. Now I'm starting to get my vision back. There's extra oxygen that I had not been using because it will make your throat hurt after a while. But I was like, oh, I'm gonna juice up to the gills with this extra pure oxygen. So I'm like pumping myself. I'm trying to do breath work to get myself hyperoxygenated. And then the airplane shoots up, which is pretty cool. And then it slows down up to the point where it's in basically starts free fall. That's probably like a nanosecond time, but it feels like forever when you're actually doing it. And then with the wings, you flop it over and then you go full speed down and curve. And we go head down, engines go on, luckily. Now we're accelerating full speed. And he hit apparently 7 Gs, I wouldn't know, but I was squeezing to my dear life because the more you squeeze in your abs, you can hold on more G forces. But if you release too early, all the blood will go into your legs and you'll definitely pass out. So you have to hold on the whole way. So I'm holding with my pure oxygen to my dear life and I make it. And actually the 5 Gs was way harder than the 7 Gs. But it was gnarly. And after that, we did some low altitude flights. I got to do some loops. It was really fun. But at that point, my adrenaline had peaked. We came down, I came home. I got my passport back. I got my phone back, my laptop back. I traveled safely back to Finland. And it was a cool experience. With money, you can buy almost anything, maybe not your health or a fit body or a loving house, but you can buy almost anything else. And this is an example of one of those things you can buy. There are many weird things that these same people that broker flights in Russia have brokered, like driving a tank in the Red Square or shooting cows with a bazooka in Cambodia. There's all kinds of weird things you can do with money, but this was a childhood dream of mine. It was fairly a waste of money in a way. If you think of like a short, let's say less than an hour flight, that costed me 20K, but it was a memory I'm happy I have, and I'm happy as my bucket list. It was one of the main things I wanted to do before I die. At the end of the day, we're all gonna die. Nobody's gonna remember us really. And this is just a roller coaster ride of life. So I'm happy I got to experience that. Would I do it again? Probably not, although I have flown fighter jet once after that, but generally that part of my life is now I'm good. As a parent, I don't need that in my life, and I guess Russia is mostly closed anyway. Hopefully you enjoyed that story. If you're interested in more of these weird stories, I do have quite a few of them, like hitchhiking through Italy and almost getting killed, and some other things weird things I've done in life. If you like the content, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share it with your friends, leave a comment below. Thank you for being with me for this story time, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.